Hi again then guys, and welcome to another look back to the past of the Gran Turismo franchise, once again to GT2, and this is one of those cars which, as I've said with a number before, it's easy to overlook. But it's the kind of car which I think if you had brought it back, if Polyphony had brought it back to say Gran Turismo 4 or 5 or 6 in particular, not so much GT Sport, although I think people would love to have it on there anyway, it would have really fitted in well, because it's a perfect kind of car for the game series and the franchise that Gran Turismo was. This franchise that features, yes, race cars, performance cars, supercars, but also normal cars, cars that you could actually see every day. And Gran Turismo 2 was a fantastic game for that. Some of the cars were actually borderline boring because of how normal they were. Now this is not one of those. It is easy to overlook for most people, but for the discerning eye, especially for the Subaru fan, you'd be very happy to see this one in the game. And I know I certainly was, because the Forester is actually my favourite Subaru. The Forester STI in particular is by far my favourite model that Subaru has ever made, and yes, I am including the 22B in that discussion. I like the Forester STI genuinely more than the 22B, and I know that's heresy to any Subaru fan, but that's the way it is for me, because I love cars that are less expected, more obscure, more oddball, but still really good. And the Forester STI definitely ticks all of those boxes. But given that the Legacy and the Forester share an arguably more sedate version of the Impreza's DNA, but that DNA nonetheless, that guarantees you certain things. You know what you're going to get when you buy something with Subaru Performance DNA. You're going to get a dependable, forgiving, very competitive car, but basically with a varied amount of trunk space. That's kind of what separates them, because really, the Forester you could call an SUV, or at the very least a wagon really, but it's not a full SUV. It's almost like a jacked up wagon. It's not quite an SUV, but it's more than an estate car. I think that's a pretty cool area to be in, actually, and it's a part of the market which doesn't really have a huge amount of rivals. There are some, you could argue, but not a huge amount, especially outside of Japan. Now, as far as the specs go, again, you expect certain things: all-wheel drive, 2-litre boxer turbo engine, you get all of the above, and in its fully tuned form, it's got really good numbers, over 380 horsepower and over 320 pound-feet of torque. But I would say arguably the best thing, definitely the most deceptive thing about this Forester, is the weight. Because after the full weight loss procedure has been done to it, it weighs 1,201 kilos. That is awesome. That's not far off, say, a TVR, for instance. So for this 5-door, 5-seater off-road wagon to be that lightweight is really, really impressive. Now the horsepower per tonne because of that is just under 320. That's really good. That can actually put some sports cars to shame. And with the aforementioned price tag of only 21 grand anyway, well, this is looking like kind of a unicorn bargain. Kind of a sleeper, kind of a unicorn, definitely an icon from Subaru, and it's the kind of car which, if you live here in the UK as I do, especially in more rural parts, you can see these occasionally, generally in like a two-tone green, but they don't tend to be performance versions. I do like about the Forester though that it has this kind of unassuming brilliance to it. And brilliance may be too strong a word for some people, but what I mean by that is, I think of it in a similar vein as stuff like the Volkswagen Touareg, or the, say, Volvo 240 GLT, or various others like that, or the Land Rover Defender even. They're these cars which are kind of iconic in their own way, but they don't necessarily shout about it. They just get the job done really well, but also they are desirable. People enjoy looking at them, they enjoy owning them. They are desirable cars, but not in a performance way. That, I think, is part of the appeal, at least, of a Forester. And it just so happens that this one's fast as well. Now, the handling is easily the best thing about the way the car performs, because with a lot of cars, especially performance ones in GT2, because of the handling physics of the game, it's very easy to overcook it and to be slippery. With something like a Skyline, or this one, or an Evo, or an Impreza, that kind of thing, particularly all-wheel drive performance cars, you can throw this thing through corners, and it looks ridiculous, because a car that looks like this should not be able to go as fast as it can, but it's such a performance sleeper. As I said, it's a car which is deceptively good. You can tune it to different power levels, and although it's not going to necessarily beat everything in its way, it could beat most of them. It's a good car, and don't be fooled by its looks, don't be fooled by its size. It's at least as good as some of the Imprezas, not necessarily the absolute top of the tree Imprezas, but it's as good as some of them with similar specs, definitely as good, if not better, as some of the legacies as well. And as I said, it's easily my favourite Subaru. It's the ultimate combination of their range of performance and practicality, because it's quicker than the legacies, or most of them at least, but it's more practical than the Impreza. So it's a really good middle ground. It's got the more workhorse image of the Subaru range, but it happens to be a really, really good performance car as well. It's great off the line. Top speed is decent. It's not outstanding, but you wouldn't really expect it to be. It's just a good car. It's a good car to go for. It's a real shame, I think, that the Forester in any form wasn't featured after Gran Turismo 2, because I would have loved to have seen maybe this one or the STI for sure featured in, say, Gran Turismo 6. And I could have imagined that happening. It looks like the kind of car that would have been in the game. So it's kind of a shame that it didn't, and I don't think that it's going to be coming back anytime soon. It would be cool if it did, but it just wouldn't really fit in, I don't think, in Gran Turismo Sport. But that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.